Now, if we look at it from the, again, short-term holders, we're just taking a ratio between their profit and their loss, right? How much of that is profit or loss? This is nice to try and identify, obviously, market trends, but much like SOPA and many of our realized profit and loss indicators, you'll find that the break-even level of 1 is generally a point of support, but also an inflection point. And you can see we're cooling back down towards the break-even level. We're still in this profit-dominant regime, and ideally, the market wants to find support on this level. Because if you start to get losses accelerate, sometimes that can actually signify that there is a regime shift, right? These dips below make sense because people buy the local top, 31K, and they panic sell when it goes down to 28.5. But a more sustained downtrend in their losses is kind of telling you the market is panicking. And we just have to be careful because there are a lot of people who still acquired their coins in that 30K, 31K. And if price starts to fall, it can become a little bit of a top-heavy market, and you can get that acceleration, which can become a bit of a trend shift. So what we're seeing is we are indeed getting that cooling down back to the break-even level. This is one to watch to see whether we actually get an acceleration of losses, potentially signifying a trend shift, or if we get our classic retest of 1, which typically is a support level if the uptrend wants to continue. Now, if we move across and look at the same style of metrics for the long-term holder cohort, long-term holders, historically speaking, and we do have papers on this in our Insights portal, typically speaking, long-term holders come in 2 forms, and we're going to explore this a bit more. There's the long-term holders who have been around for a couple of cycles, and they're generally fairly well-versed with Bitcoin. These groups tend to realize profits once we break the previous all-time high. Note here, we broke the 20K all-time high. Their profits absolutely moon. And just note, this is in log scale, right? So the amount of profit they're locking in is extraordinary during bull markets. During bear markets, the long-term holders are those who buy the cycle top. We call these our first cycle hodlers. They come in during all the excitement, they hold their coins for the entirety of the bear, and then they get flushed out typically at the bottom. This was me. This was me back here in 2018, kind of learning for the very first time, my first market cycle, buying the top, riding it all the way down, acquiring, and then finally capitulating at the lows. I think most people go through this experience, whether with Bitcoin or with some other asset. So we actually do have 2 different groups of long-term holders, those who've been around for long enough to understand, and those who are kind of learning it for the first time. So in terms of a bit of context here, we're in a profit regime for long-term holders, but you can see we're in that 2019 kind of sideways grinding period. We're not in that exuberant profit-taking period. Generally speaking, long-term holders are just kind of sitting tight. We've had the flush out. We haven't yet seen that acceleration of profits. Historically speaking, that normally starts when the market breaks the all-time high. So we're obviously some distance away from that just yet.